Well, welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delegro, your host as usual. And my guest today is Eddie Collins, who's an enterprise architect by day and a beekeeper, I guess, all the rest of the time. Is that kind of an accurate assessment, Eddie?
That's a very accurate assessment. Like some days I wonder which person I am on that day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you couldn't get two more diverse like technologies, right? The high tech, you're an enterprise architect for, data centers and things of all that sort. And then you go home and making honey and
Yeah, it's
taking care of
100%
bees.
right, Paul. I mean, beekeeping is definitely agriculture. As anything else progresses, there's more and more tech getting into it, but it's pure agriculture, nature, beekeeping husbandry.
Yeah. So we're not really going to talk much about technology today, Eddie, unless you want to, of course. But really, really wanted to talk about the business of bees. And let's start. How did you get into it, by the way? How does one get into starting with, having bees, making honey and all that?
I think that's an interesting question to ask me because when I was growing up, I literally hated it. It was all
Really?
getting stung. It was work. My grandpa had them. My dad
Okay.
had them. So I'm a third generation beekeeper, and now actually my daughter's a beekeeper. So we have fourth
Wow.
generation of beekeeping in our family. Back then it was just bees sting, bees hurt. But roughly right about 27 years ago, my father-in-law was out there in his garden pollinating his squash with Q-tip because bees are very vital to
Really?
pollination in gardens. And it's amazing the yield on your garden if you have bees or don't have bees. There's a direct correlation. And he mentioned, he goes, your dad had bees. And I said, "Yeah, let's get some. Let's, cut out." And I got one, I got two, and then I got four. And then it seems like overnight I ended up with about 1,600.
Oh my God.
So I
So I
really,
got a question
it's
for
interesting
you.
because I went from hating them to falling in love with them and can't get enough of it. It
Really?
is manual labor, but it's also unbelievable, in the IT technical field, very stressful sometimes. I lose myself in the beehive in the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can, that actually makes sense to me. It's kind of an outlet for you, right?
Yeah. But kind of getting to and when you asked me to do this podcast, I was looking and I go, was this really fitting yours? Well, I took it past a hobby, past helping out people to a business. And I really looked at it as a sideline business that I could do, that I could really control the time. Because I do have a full-time job working for a grocery company and I'm on call and stuff. But this, even though it's a lot of work, especially during the spring, it's flexible. I've got a task to get done. I can do it in the morning before work, after work, or all weekend. There are times when I actually got big enough to my hobby, like you hear a lot of penny to a business. My ultimate goal was my first goal was to pay off my truck. I wanted to buy a new truck and pay for it with beekeeping. My next
Okay.
goal
So let's back. How long ago was that, Eddie? How long,
that was like
when you started?
1999,
Okay.
2001, right around that time.
Okay.
And it's
So,
interesting. Then my goals got more loftier, and I said, I want to pay for my kids' college with my side income. So
okay.
it really became a business. And back to how I got into it, I'm very OCD, I guess. But when I get a hobby, I usually join a club and I get a magazine subscription. And I read the magazine from cover to end. And it's interesting. There was an article or a help wanted ad in the back of that magazine that says needed help working bees in South Texas. Well, I called this gentleman up. He was a professional, what you call migratory beekeeper. He did it for a living. And he migratory because he lives in Minnesota and we come down to Texas, for our mild winters and our early spring. He said he needs some help. So I said, I'm interested. He goes, well, I can pay you. I'm like, I'm just looking for help. And he still says today, I'm the only guy that ever sent him a resume coming to work in bees. But so I just jumped into it and I started out with him, learned a lot because, you live, breathe, eat bees. You would look at bees so many times, and some days you'd go home at night and you close your eyelids and you could see bees walking across them. You really get that much experience and exposure to bees. And he said, I can pay you. And I said, well, we wasn't looking for a job. And he offered to pay me in bees. So I
Okay.
said, okay. So that first year he paid me in 40 beehives. And I'm like, fall. I'm like, what am I going to do with food beer? You know, I don't want that many. So I went to our local club and offered to sell them. And I sold out that night. And just every year I got a little bigger. And now we sell anywhere from 700 to 1,000 beer nuts a week. That's all we do.
So, it looks like there's, if I understand this correctly, there's two ends to this business. There's the selling of the bees and growing them and selling them, and the making of the honey.
There's
Are you in that side of the business as well?
That's just two sides of it. It's
Okay.
amazing from bees. I'm in both sides.
Okay.
There's also, I'm going to say that something that's really probably saved the American beekeeper is pollination. For example, California cannot make almonds without bees. The bees are vital to the pollination of almonds. So every year towards mid-February into January, there is a mass transportation of honeybees across our interstate systems to California. And they rent them for approximately 2 to 3 weeks to get glean their almonds. So we also ship bees to California. So you get a pollination check. So with bees, there's pollination, there's honey. Well, bees make wax. So you can make candles, you can make cosmetics. If you look in cosmetics, there's a lot of wax in cosmetics. There's also royal jelly. You've been seeing a lot of cosmetics and a lot of medicine. So it's interesting with bees, there's a lot of different avenues to make revenue streams. And so it's interesting, with that same beehive, you can make an income 4 or 5 different ways. And that's really with agriculture and stuff, to make a living at it with, decent thing, you've got to do something like that. It's hard to just make it off of honey or just make it off of selling bees.
And so, are you doing anything else besides selling of the honey and actually, selling bees? Are you getting any other
We
aspects
sell
of that
bees.
business?
Another big, it's still kind of under the caveat of selling bees, but we raise queens. And my daughter, the art of raising queens, I'm just going to call it grafting queens. It's the art of, if you're in a beehive, you have roughly 60,000 bees
Okay.
and you're in queen. One thing, bees are amazing creatures. If they lose that queen, they'll make another one. And
How do you
it's
make a
just,
queen?
they take a bee lays in the life cycle of a bee is the queen lays an egg. Okay. The fertilized egg, and that turns into a regular worker bee. But if they feed that regular larva, it's it goes from a life cycle just like a butterfly. You got an egg, then you go into a larva stage, you relate to look like a caterpillar, then it metamorphosizes into a bee. Okay. Well, if a queen lays a fertilized egg, it will turn into a regular bee. If the beehive takes that fertilized egg as soon as it hatches, feeds it a surplus of royal jelly for so many days, it will turn into a queen.
Really?
So how bees do it is if the queen starts failing, because the queen, depending on who you read, will lay 2 to 3,000 eggs a day. Think of that compared to the chicken laying 1 egg a day. So if the queen lets off pheromones, which basically really controls the whole hive, their scent. So if her pheromones start dropping because she's laying less eggs or she gets hurt or gets injured, they will basically roughly knock her off and raise a new queen. Or if just something happens to her. Me as a beekeeper, I'm in there accidentally smash her, they'll raise a new queen. So what they will do is these insects and bees are all about numbers. It takes 60,000 bees to make money. Their livelihood is dependent on that one queen. So they don't raise just one queen. Let's just say they'll raise 16, 20, 10. It depends on how healthy the hive is. Well, that first queen that hatches will go kill all the others.
Oh, really?
So we have an artificial process, we call it artificial, because we 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 remove that queen from the hive, and so we're forcing that hive to make more queens. And
Okay.
roughly we'll have one hive make 60 queens. And before they hatch, we'll take those 60 out and place each one of them in another individual hive. So now we've got 60 queens. So
So you increase
as in that
production.
process, we sell a lot of queens. Okay?
Wow.
One reason is for a commercial beekeeper, usually the best practice is to put a new queen in every year because she's a young queen, she lays a lot, and that hive will make a lot more money. So it's
How
worth
long?
the
How
extent.
long will a queen last if you just
Well,
let them
yeah,
live?
that's a difficult question to answer, Paul, depending on who you ask. I'm gonna say back to my grandpa's day, been live 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
In our
How about
days,
now?
uh, 2 years, we probably pushed it. in my opinion.
Now, why do you think it's gone down like that?
For several reasons. One, you think about it as a commercial beekeeper, as a migratory beekeeper, we put a lot more stress load on the plant.
Yeah,
You think about it in normal, like, in our area, they come through the winter. There's one really big spring crop called the honey flow, and all the flowers are blooming. And then they kind of go into a survival mode through the summer. And then there's usually a little bitty honey flow in the fall, and then they go through the winter. Well, by me shipping them all over the United States, I'm making them do that more, harvest honey flow 3 or 4 times. So there's more demand on them. The biggest number one thing is, I'll say the biggest thing is there's pesticides. There's a lot of pesticides out there. And another thing is bees that my grandpa didn't have, is they have a parasite called a varroa mite. And it's literally a bug on a bug that basically gets in there and sucks the blood, sucks their blood. But, and they also transmit viruses. So that is the number one, you hear of CCD, colony collapse order, so it's all really to me tied back to that varroa mite, which is very detrimental. Now, beekeepers, there's several different ways, integrated pest management, but a lot of times, ultimately, the end of that pest management, there's different things you could do to try to naturally prevent those mites. But to me, my good example is like your dog that's fleas and ticks. You can wash it with organic shampoo, you can brush
yeah,
them, but ultimately, sometimes you get to the point you've got to put a flea collar on or put that medicine behind the shoulder. Bees are the same way. So we have to put a chemical on the side in there to try to kill that varroa mite. We're very careful about we do it. You don't want to do it when they're making honey, different time of the year. So it's very regulated, which is good because it's a food source. But it's a challenge because I'm trying to kill a bug on a bug.
yeah,
Yeah. But that chemical to me is very stressful for that hive and that queen. If you think
yeah.
about
I
it,
can imagine it would
it's
be.
it's pesticides, it's stress that the beekeeper, puts on. Think about this, if I ask you to work 80 hours a week for months after months, eventually your body's going to break down. So beekeepers, to make a living in America, really you have to put a little stress on the bee. You got pesticides, stress on the bee, parasites, chemicals, and then a lot of times just they're natural, with all of us to try the way we do crops or we mow the bar ditches and stuff, their natural food is not as good as it used to be. But to me, it's a combination of all of it. And that's stressful for those bees. So ultimately, that's a long answer to your question, but why I believe 20 guys.
No, that was great. So, what do you have to feed the bees, or they just
Um,
organically eat
as,
whatever they want to
as a
eat?
commercial beekeeper, we will feed them a lot more because we're trying to do a lot more with them. We're either trying to keep them big because of California, or we will unnaturally have 200 to 300 beehives in one field. Where in the wild, you might have one or two in the field. There's just not
Right.
enough flowers to support that many bees.
Okay.
But you can imagine for labor reasons, is different stuff. If I have 1,000 hives, I can't put two here and 2 miles down the road and 2 miles down the road. But also at the same time, when we're making bees, when we're splitting bees, and splitting bees is the art of you take one beehive and you make it into 4 or 5 smaller. Well, we're feeding them to try to give them a boost to get them going quick.
Yeah. I mean,
And we
how
feed
the
them
hell
high
do you
fructose
find
corn
the
syrup.
queen?
We feed
How
them
the
high
hell do you
fructose
find
corn
the
syrup.
queen?
What's that?
I was gonna say, how do you find the queen in a hive of like 40,
Uh,
50,000 bees? I
like,
mean,
have you ever, my best analogy is it's like the where's Waldo. Okay. It's literally when I'm working a hive, one, you kind of, by knowing how to take care of bees, you can understand where she should be. In a typical beehive, you just to say you have 10 frames in a box. Usually the outside frames are honey. The next frames are probably pollen. And then you start getting into what you call the brood nest, where she lays, where she's laying her eggs. Usually she's in that brood. But even though you start on one of those outside frames, and I read them off the book, you pick it up, look at it, you can tell a lot about you. Start really paying attention more and more closer to where you think she should be. And then it's like a word wall road type game. But at the same time, the more you do it, the better you get at it. One thing, a
yeah,
queen, she's a lot longer than a regular bee. So she does look different. But I think to your point of these one queen amongst 60,000 bees. So it's really, you get good, you get better at it. Some days you look at a hive and you're never finding. The next day you look down and there she is. But a lot of it's just practice in the orchard.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, you've been doing this a long time. I get the heebie-jeebies over
You know,
bees.
it's interesting. People ask me, does it, you never get used to getting stung. I tell people it, it still hurts. You don't jump as high or scream as loud. You might close your eyes and count to 10, but you keep going. Some people are more tolerant than others. To me, you do get used to it, but it still hurts.
Lovely.
And you have a
What?
protected equipment. I'll bring people over, and I recommend if we ever get a chance, stop by the house. I'll put you in a bee seat and we'll go through the hive. I can't 100% guarantee you won't get stung, but I'm come pretty close.
Yeah.
Uh, usually I don't like getting stung on the head, so I always put a bee veil on top of my head. So I'll just take the sting on my hand and finger and my arms because it's just too hot.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
An
Especially in the
interesting fact
summertime.
I was thinking about it too. You hear about Africanized bees and stuff like that. When I was talking about when they raise 16 queens, and the first one hatches wins, normally an Africanized bee, a bee with the genetics of Africanization, which makes it mean. Still, you can't tell the difference, but look at them. Usually she'll hatch up to a day earlier. So, let's say a queen bee goes out, she flies out of the hive, she gets mated outside, she'll mate with multiple young, okay, or multiple boy bees. A drone is a boy bee. And then let's just say one of those drones happened to be an Africanized bee from black. So now she is carrying sperm from that Africanized bee. Again, she only makes once in her lifetime, and for the rest of her life, she carries that sperm and she'll lay those eggs. Well, they're using one of her eggs to make a new queen. They say they need to
Okay.
replace her, or they need to swarm or whatever. Well, if one of those eggs happened to be, uh, fertilized with that Africanized gene, that's usually the first queen to hatch, and she kills the other one. So that's one way that Africanized bees propagate. And it's pretty much impossible
Mm,
to hope they'll blend in that gene as they will learn.
yeah. They're just more aggressive, and that's something I did want to talk to you about. You hear the stories of the Africanized bees being really aggressive, and how prevalent are they here in the States right now?
So I haven't looked at a map recently, Paul, but definitely through Texas and all the southern states. And if you look at, they do go on trucks, ships, and stuff and spread, but it seems like the temperature and just the wet weather and stuff will slow them down. But they're definitely on the southern.
Yeah.
And the ones that
I
are
mean,
like Arizona and New Mexico. It was in Texas used to have a county quarantine program. So it was only certain counties. Now they just consider the whole state and African state. And they're
I have
mean.
a friend of
My
mine
best
that
way to
says the
explain an Africanized bee is if I walked up, my thought, whatever, let's just say I walked up and I shook one of my hives. I have 3 or 4 bees come after you. If you do that on an Africanized hive, you have a couple thousand.
really,
So they're,
wow,
and they're still, each sting is normal called a regular bee. It's just a quantity. And, animals, small kids or something, they don't know to run away. They just try to fall. I'll try to outrun them. I'm not fast enough. Bees can fly pretty
yeah.
fast.
No, I think I told you that story when we first talked. I have a
Yes.
water filtration system on my house,
Mhm.
and once a month I go in there, check the salt levels and all that, and I
Yeah.
open it up one day, and there was a huge hive in there, and
Yeah.
it damn near knocked me over. They just came after me,
Good.
and I knew instantly. I don't know. My instinct just said run, and that's what I did. I just kept running. I had a baseball cap on. I had one up my nose. I had
Well,
several in my hat. I mean, I got stung several times. My
and
family
it
was worried
happens
that,
before you blink an eye. It's just
yeah,
boom, boom,
yeah.
boom. Usually
And
the first time you get hit, and then there's like 10 to 20 coming right behind you. It's quick.
yeah, totally caught me off guard. Like I was just a
Yeah.
casual Saturday, just doing some chores around the house. Hey, I got to go check the salt level. I lift the cover, and they just all come at me, and it was
And
scary.
you can
I got to
imagine
admit,
if you were a small kid or a dog, they wouldn't know to run back to the house or get away. They start falling in the ground, rolling, and then just millibees come.
yeah,
Some people are allergic to them. There's some people one sting that cause them to quit breathing. Some people, chop you shove it can take more sting. Hurts, but
yeah. My daughter was worried. She just made me take some Benadryl. I don't even know if that works, but you
it
know,
does. It's interesting. Some of it works, and some of it is a placebo. That you feel you're doing something and you calm down, slowly breathe and stuff. But it definitely works. Some people carry an EpiPen around, just for that reason.
Sure. Would make
It's
sense.
interesting though. People ask me, my dad had million bees 40 years ago, 30 years ago. It's always been around. It's just they're more relevant now. Uh, but man, I get calls to get bees out of the house or the water meters. I've been all kind of good places getting bees out of up on ladders I shouldn't be on, but I get called a lot of times. Those little, I call them paper wasps, guinea wasps, yellow jackets. I'd rather deal with an Africanized bee to me before I book one of those wasps.
Really.
It's just like a little bitty yellow wasp. I thought, no, whoever you talk to, what part of text you're into, you look at on, you make a paper mache mask. I'd rather mess with killer bees, Africanized bees any day if shoot those wasps.
Now, are you the type of beekeeper that like will go out and like? I know some people get them in the walls of their houses,
I
and
used to do that a lot. I think I got up to one year I did 120 of them. I used to do that a lot.
yeah,
It's amazing. People say they've not sprayed them and you start taking it down and you smell the pesticide. Or it's always interesting. Sometimes you think it's a small hive and it'll be wall stud to stud honey for 6 to 8 feet.
yeah,
Sometimes you
I've
think
seen
it's a
some
master hive and
videos
it's
on
about to
it.
be a softball. It's hard to tell from looking on the outside.
Yeah, I had to call someone in to get rid of the hive in the cabinet there on
Mhm.
the outside of my house. It was pretty big.
The interesting thing, as I've done it before, and I would charge for the service. A lot of people, okay, they wouldn't, they would kill them when you're killing, you basically now have a wall full of maggots, and God, it stinks so bad, and then they'd call me back to come back and take it out. I got most of my calls from Terminix because they didn't want to mess with them. They didn't want to mess with them.
Would they try to relocate? Say you get called into a house and there's a hive that has to be removed. Would they try to
Mhm.
relocate those bees or just kill them?
I always try to relocate them. I always brought them home, put them in a box. If I smelt that they've been sprayed with pesticide and you can smell it, then I would just euthanize them. 'Cause I don't want to get that into my apiary, my hives,
Sure.
and contaminated. And
You know, I have
sometimes
a friend of mine that says he
it's
wants to
not unheard
start.
of to find 10 to 12 gallons of honey in the wall.
Ugh, crazy. But how far from the house do you have to keep? Like, if you're just a regular everyday guy that wants to have some bees, how far from the house is a
You know,
safe distance to keep them?
that's personal preference. I'd say they need to be out of the way. So, I have to mow around them, I have to walk by them all the time. It's better if your neighbors can't see them. It all depends on your neighbors, but it's better if they can't see them. But, I would say, oh, I've got right now like 50 hives, 75 yards from my back store, and they never bothered.
Okay.
You know, now, I don't have to mow back there. You don't want them where you have to mow around them. They don't like lawnmowers. They hate meters, they hate the vibration. Really, it's not necessarily how it's close. It's just they need to be out of the way so they're not in their everyday walking path.
That makes sense, actually.
I have some people say, well, I want to put it right by my garden so they pollinate the garden. I'm like, those bees will find the garden. Put it, on back on the corner of this so they're out of the way.
Yeah, that
And,
was actually
also
my
too,
next question was
some
how
of your
far from
tall,
your
you know,
crops, you know?
and if you're not worried about it, different stuff. So for me, I can't really say it's 10 feet, 20 feet or 100 feet or whatever it is. It's just out of the way. I've had some people that love them, put them on their back door. I
Really?
wouldn't do that. And to me, the likelihood of you getting stung every once in a while is a lot higher.
Yeah,
But
that makes sense.
mm,
So now you said you have them, how many at your house?
we're
Eh,
about 50 right now.
And do you have any other locations or is that it for you guys right
Oh
now?
no, yeah. And it's interesting. People ask me, where do you put all those hives? Uh, you meet one good farmer, one good landowner, you get in good with them, you keep your gates closed, you give them honey, you take care of their property. And they've always got friends, brothers, relatives. And it's amazing how the farmers are willing to help other agriculture people. Everybody likes bees, so it's usually not a challenge to find bee location.
Okay.
So
Especially where
majority of the
you're
time, my
out.
bees are not at my property.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're out in East Texas too, so a lot of land out there,
Right
obviously. So
now.
you're in a good spot, I
Yeah.
think. Well, Now you said the southern states. Obviously, it's warmer, more conducive to growing bees or raising bees. What about what are the cold climates do? Because they need bees up there too, like
Oh no,
Michigan and
you
Minnesota. And,
uh, there's people that keep bees up there. There's people that keep bees in Canada. They can handle the cold as long as they have enough food. So bees
okay,
make honey, and that's their food. That's why they're making it. But they make a surplus. They make more in some of the genetics, and them to breed. And that's actually why the Africanized bees were brought over here, because they wanted to take the good genetics from them that make a lot of honey. So bees can survive the cold as long as they have food. Okay. But I'll tell you, it's one of the biggest reasons they come to East Texas, always for the pollen. It's our mild winters or earlier springs. But you think about it, if you know, bees are all about numbers. And it takes a lot of bees to make honey. So usually when bees are smart. God knew what he was doing when he created them. They made them great. So they're not going to be raising new bees, making new bees, getting bigger unless the flowers are going to have food coming in. Let's say in the winter, if that queen starts laying 2,000 eggs a day, if they don't have new food coming in, they eat up all their food, they're going to die.
right.
So think about it this way. They wait to start really getting big once the trees start putting out the pollen, and some things are bringing some food in. Okay. And then, so they kind of miss the first part of the big flowers because they're still growing up getting big. So by the northern people, by bringing them down here, they get 2 months jump on. So time they come down here, our springs are earlier,
Sure,
flowers, so they get big. Then they ship them back up there. So now the hive has 60 to 80,000 bees in it when their flowers first start blooming.
they're
They're gonna
ready to
make a lot more
go.
honey.
Yeah, yeah. So in that business, I would think, are there any like really big corporations in the bee business, or is it mostly mom and pops and small businesses like yours?
Um, there's a lot of hobby beekeepers that I'm gonna say have 2 to 10.
Okay,
Okay. There are I couldn't say the number. Man, it comes and goes based on honey prices, fuel prices. It's a manual labor job. Um, but I think the biggest beekeeper in the United States is right south of Crockett Creek. He lives in, I think, South Dakota, but he overwinters in the summer place there, place in the way. Um, is there just south. So there's a lot
Eh,
of commercial beekeepers. I say that's commercial beekeepers would be people that make their living off of it. That's their primary job. And most of them are in pollination and honey prices. And one thing I saw that to me, California was really good for the industry and also really bad. It was really good because beekeepers, they were making just enough to stay alive, feed their
sure. Pay
kids,
the
pay the
bills.
diesel expenses to make it till next year. Well, California added one additional paycheck to all that. So it really me made beekeeping profitable. Usually, but I say it's also bad because it's stressful for the bees. Plus, all the bees in the United States, all of them anyway, they get a lot of bees get shipped to California. So now one has disease or pesticides, not pesticides, but disease or viruses. It spreads all of them and we bring it back. So it's
Yeah,
like a necessary, I'm just call it evil. It's a necessary evil. But, it's stray lotus who's down there by it's in Great, not Great, it's just south of Crocker and Wiggins. I don't know how many bees he has now, but it's like the biggest big keeping in the United States. I'm not sure of any big corporation. Some of the almond growers and stuff kind of banded together, and I think kind of started a corporation now that kind of where they just get the bees from them versus the individual beekeeper.
right. Now,
Overall,
do
I'm gonna think it's
all?
still, and a lot of it's family business.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, a lot of it's people that have been in the business for a long time. Another spinoff of this too, that's kind of gotten big later on honey is making mead. They should make, I'm gonna say it's, the alcoholic beverage line made it where honey is the sugar source. You know, big Walker family down south of Waco, in Temple area or something was they really got big into the, mead making. But again, they're, I don't know how many generations back.
interesting. How about do all plants need bees to?
Not all plants. Definitely a lot of your fruits and vegetables, a lot of your grains don't. Well, your almonds do. Tomatoes do. A lot of them can get pollinated by other things. It's interesting. A lot of tomatoes in the greenhouses are pollinated by bumblebees. Um, The actual honeybee is a lot better pollinator, and you have so many of them. The reason for bumblebees in greenhouses, you can't take a beehive and put it in a greenhouse, they'll die. It's all go in the die where a bumblebee, which is a much smaller nest, will come back to your hive. But no, all plants do not. Some of them self-pollinate, some of them pollinate by a different insect.
So, I mean,
It's your
again, I don't,
squashes, your berries, a lot of the nuts, the mountains, definitely.
I don't know much about this, so I'm learning a lot today. But I would think now that I'm thinking through this, that most people in agriculture that need bees, probably part of their ecosystem is having bees to help them pollinate their plants and all that. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
I would say a lot of the smaller beekeepers, they're either just very interested in it because they're fascinating little creatures. Some of them want to save the bees. A lot of them get it for the garden, especially like, I'm gonna say your people that have little small farms, little gardens, or we have a lot of people ask us to bring bees to help pollinate the garden. And then I'll say, I'll keep thinking of this. In this way, there's a bunch of facets of beekeeping. Well, another thing that's really popped up in Texas now is people want bees to get agriculture exemption on the land, said Lord Impact. And we actually do, we rent a lot of bees to people. So let's say you have 10 acres. You don't want to have cows, you don't want to have horses, you're not raising timber, but you want to get the ag exemption for 9 of those acres to get a lot lower taxes.
Sure.
If you can show that you have bees, which I would say every county's different. Every county's different, which is challenging because we live out of Several County. You can get ag exemption by having bees. And we just have to show that the bees are there. So you rent them from us or other people. You pay a small price for what you rent the bees for, but you get a lot bigger benefit from the taxing them. And that's something that's the last 7 years that Betsy's is allowed is beekeeping for ag.
So is there a minimum amount of bees per acre or something like that to
It
get
all
the ag?
depends on the county. It all
Yeah.
depends on the county. I let you throw you over to my daughter. She's the one that takes care of that side of our little world here.
Now that's something I want to talk to you about. Now your daughter's in the business too. Is this her full time gig? Is
This
this
is
what
her
she?
full-time job. Back to that, me doing bees to pay for her education. She's actually educated as an English teacher. And so she just got fed up with all the politics and different
Yeah,
stuff in
can't
school.
blame her.
And plus, this is, she makes a lot bit more at beekeeping than she'd be at school. Plus, she's like her own little boss,
Yeah,
her own company, set her hours and different stuff. And, not that she, teachers have some really neat perks as far as hours, but she just enjoys it out there. And I
yeah.
think that's truly what it is. Now a different job. Over the summer and long breaks, she started helping me. And then as we got bigger and bigger, she asked if she could do it full time. And so now, and she does she loves raising queens, uh, bees, and we deals with all the people, when we sell bees.
So who's the boss, you or her?
I'm gonna say she is now. I'm the hired, like I'm the free labor and the banker. But I was like, Paul, about a couple of years ago, I really, I had to make a big decision. Do I go full time beekeeping? Stay full time in the build creation company in IT, enterprise architect, and I kind of really gave a lot more, handed a lot more off to her. I'm still very involved, but I'm gonna say really she's around it now. So I'm still heavily involved, help her and
But yeah,
different
I was going to
stuff.
say it's not like you gave it up completely. You're still
Yeah,
involved.
then
Now, is this something like when you retire? I mean, this is something. If she's, obviously she's your daughter, she's younger. You can still stay involved when you retire because you got it. We got it.
yeah.
I'm getting close to retirement. I don't know about
Mhm.
you, but I'm getting close to retirement, and I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I got to
You
stay
know,
busy.
that was always my plan, and I definitely will. There's money in it if you will put your time there. You can't
Yeah,
count your hours because you'd be making 10 cents an hour. But if you would if you put, just like anything, I think if you set your mind to it, Paul, and you really go at it, you can bet it's successful. And I've said, I keep bouncing around different things. There's a lot of niches in
sure.
beekeeping, selling honey, selling pollen, selling wax, selling bees, selling queens, pollination. But an interesting thing, when you ask, will you do it in retirement? It's a lot of manual labor. And as we get older, you can't do it.
The body
It's
doesn't
interesting. I've
cooperate.
known a lot of beekeepers that have done it since they grew up in it. They did it in life, and now They have trouble walking. Their back hurts. They do hip replacements and stuff. So then it gets to you really got to be smart about it and hire help.
Yeah. But that's
But
got
that's
to be
another
hard too,
challenge
though,
we
right?
have is, a lot of high school kids don't want to do it. A lot of like
Yeah.
people don't want to do it. It's very seasonal work. It's a work. It's manual labor. You get stung. You're always chasing the sun going up or going down. And lift a lot of heavy stuff.
Now, I know there's like busy seasons and slow during the busy season when you're harvesting and doing. I mean, how many employees do you need at
It all
that
depends
point?
on how many hives you have. But I would say, in March and April, you know, 4 to 6. It depends on how many bees you have and how much you want to do it yourself.
Yep.
But it's not like you never have enough. But it's like, our season really starts, I'm gonna say towards the end of February through May. I mean, that's
See.
when it's every weekend, every night. It's just, again, you're chasing the sun going up or down. After that, it really slows down. There is still a lot of work. It just doesn't have to be done right now.
Right.
And it's interesting, with bees, like I talk about raising queens. When you start raising a queen, it's a natural, biological cycle. That queen, once, the egg is laid and she's going to hatch in so many days. You can't change that. So on that day, it doesn't matter if it's snowing, raining, or you're sick, and you've got to go do the work.
Yeah.
It's so different in any agriculture, when your tomatoes are getting ripe and peaches are getting ripe, you got to pick them, or they got to be watered. So this time of the year, it's very cyclic driven based on that queen's life cycle.
Yep.
Um,
That's why they're called the queen.
but other times, and it's interesting with bees too. You've always got to be thinking months ahead. Is what you're doing today really impact what that hive that they're talking stuff? And if you let them go hungry, you can't just feed them and they're not like flipping a light switch and also they're good again. They go into a stress cycle. The queen stops laying. The population declines. Or if you feed them, they just don't stop, immediately start. You got to slowly spin back up. So you really got to pay attention to them. You got to build the equipment way before you need it. There's a lot of things to do in those off times. But if you don't do those things in those off times, when busy, you stay with it.
So, is there anything that would ever wipe out a whole crop of bees?
Uh, you know, several, I'm going to say probably how many years ago, they called it colony collapse disorder. And really, to me, it was a lot of mystery of people would just go and the bees would be gone. You open the hive and they're not there. There might be a few dead ones inside. Uh, I really believe it's all caused by mites and they got viruses. And, we just didn't catch it in time and didn't treat it properly. We were in very pest management and we just, it was crazy. But it's interesting too, Paul. We don't be rude. It, it is still not uncommon. And I'll throw a statistic and, you hear the comments, 75% of statistics are made up type thing, but it is not uncommon for a commercial beekeeper to lose 20-30% of his bees every year.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't believe this is anything new, but you would think about it. What would somebody that raises horses or cows if they lost that many to their crop every year? So it's a big stress on the beekeeper, a big cost, big labor, and a big loss of profit. But you learn to manage it. And so a lot of times your losses, well, one thing interesting you really need about bees, like I talked about, well, you can split one hive into more. So you got to plan for that and have equipment to protect your honeycomb. But it is not uncommon to lose bees, a lot of bees.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds logical to me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you got to plan for it, right?
Mhm.
Well, Eddie, this has been great, man. I've really learned a lot.
Well, sorry, Paul. I feel like I've jumped around all day. The best thing I could tell you, well, I should have done before this, I need to get you to my house, put you in a suit, and let you go through the booth.
That sounds good. Now,
The only,
are you
only, only
what time?
caveat I say is you got to be careful because you may fall in love with it and want to be that.
No, I doubt that.
I don't know. I'll challenge
All
you on
right.
that.
Well, Eddie, any takeaways for the listeners out there? Anything, any parting
You
thoughts
know,
you'd like to leave?
if you're truly interested in bees, find another beekeeper. It's because bees are challenging. And I always say if I can get that beekeeper to his or her first jar of honey, they're hooked for life.
Yeah.
If you have kids that are interested, There's a lot. Go to the Texas Beekeepers Association and search for it. There's a lot of local clubs. It's amazing how many clubs are out there today compared to when I started. There's always a lot of mentorship, and a lot of them have young kids scholarship programs. So if the kids are interested in stuff, they will really fit the bill, do the training, education, provide them, most of them will provide them with the suit, the equipment, and a free beehive to get started.
Yeah.
I do suggest anybody that starts in bees always get two. You might say, well, yeah, you're selling bees. Of course you'd say two, but you can compare one to the other. Does this one look right? Does this look wrong? If one dies, you have another. And again, my goal is to get you to that first jar of honey, but also bees are very marvelous. You can take resources from one and add to the other. So you can balance them out.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be more successful. But the big thing is find a local club, find a local beekeeper that'll help you. But
And
it
I'll
really
tell you, you just got me
constantly
thinking of it. It looks like a great, wholesome family activity, too.
It really is. If you put enough into it, it's one hobby that I've found, Paul, that you can, I'm going to say this, with a little effort, you can make the hobby pay for itself. How many hobbies do you know that you could do that?
Yeah. Well, I'm a golfer, so I know I'm not making any money doing that.
And beekeeping, there's always a new club, always a new fishing
Yeah.
rod. There's always
100%.
one
Yeah.
thing I'll tell people in beekeeping too, if you get started, be careful what you watch on YouTube. To a lot of them, the people that may not do bees like you do, or they're in bees in Vermont, they keep beekeeping completely different in Vermont than it is here in Texas because of the winters and stuff. Or what's very misconceiving is if you watch a YouTube video and they say do this, they say do that. Well, X only works if you did the first 4 steps before that.
Sure.
So you
Yeah,
got to really
makes
take
sense.
everything, and the best way to do it is to jump in, but it is there's a little, upfront costs and stuff. Find somebody to help you that's been there, made those mistakes, so you don't make the same.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's like anything else in life, right? Find someone else who's done it.
Yeah.
In
And
any.
I will tell you, I didn't make up this quote, but Dr. Jamie Ellis from the University of Florida. The University of Florida has an amazing program, a lot of documentation you can look at for free. I don't know what his exact quote was, but he said, everything besides the biology of beekeeping is all opinion. A lot of what I've told you is what works for me, in my opinion.
Yep.
And it's one thing that's very, to me, interesting about bees and also very frustrating at the same time. There's a lot of variables. You do the exact same thing one year and you make a lot of honey. You do the exact same thing next year and you get no honey. What happened? Well, you got weather, you got viruses, you got mites, you got the amount of food. There's just all pesticides they get into. It's to me very fascinating about bees, but it can also be very frustrating for a new bee.
Yeah. I can see how that could happen if you do the same thing over again and different result, you get frustrated.
Right.
So, well, cool, Eddie. I think we'll end on that note.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. But mark my words, I'm getting out to East Texas to visit you.
Okay. Well, no, come on, bring some colleagues. Like I said, if you're interested, no pressure. I'll put you in a suit. Almost guarantee you won't be stung. And only warning is you might fall in love with it, man.
All right. Well, I hope so. So
You don't
well,
believe me, but I'll say it.
yeah. Well, Eddie, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. Hope is what you wanted, man.
Yeah, this was fun. We try to do business topics, and beekeeping is a business, so this is a fit right in perfectly.
Definitely. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Have a great evening.
You too. And that's a wrap for another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. This is Paul Delegro. Until next time.